Hello, everyone. JDev has returned once again to give you exactly what you want, which, of course, would be more of me, that amazing, beautiful backdrop that's usually behind me, giving you my thoughts, my opinions, and what I hope will be some expert analysis on a certain topic subject. The 2019 Major League Baseball season has finally come to an end, and congratulations to the Washington Nationals for winning the 2019 World Series, especially after losing one of their star players, Bryce Harper, to his free agency in the offseason, and starting out the 2019 season in a slump. So congratulations to Dave Martinez, former Chicago Cubs bench coach, Steven Strasburg, Max Scherzer, and the rest of the Washington Nationals, which leads me to my topic discussion. Of course, that would be the Chicago Cubs 2020 outlook. I'm going to talk about some of the 2019 season events and then what the Cubs should do for the 2020 off season. So the Cubs didn't finish strong. They did finish over 500. They had a record of 84-78, which was only good for third place in the National League Central, which got Joe Maddon to not be retained as Cubs manager, which kind of bothers me in a certain way. Joe Maddon was with the Cubs for 5 seasons and finished with at least a 500 record each of those seasons. And, of course, winning the 2016 World Series on this date, November 2nd, 2016, if you're Central Time Zone. And Joe Maddon was not retained as the Cubs manager due to the struggles of the Cubs, which, I mean, if he's going to be the scapegoat, fine, but I really don't think it's his fault. Cubs, of course, bringing in David Ross to be the new manager. Rossi, former player, Grandpa Ross, who apparently was nice, on camera, but when it came down to it, he was really on people about stuff. So hopefully Ross will get this Cub going again, and the Cubs will be back to their winning ways, which they won, but they'll be back to their winning ways of winning the Central and getting to the World Series, being a World Series competitor every year. Because after 2016, it was essentially World Series a bust every year. When 2016 happened, my goal for the Cubs was to get to the World Series. I mean, it'd be great if they won it, but to get baby steps. 2015, they got to the National League Championship Series and got swept by the New York Mets. So in 2016, it's like, okay, get to the World Series, and then we'll see what happens next. Well, they won it all in 2016, so I was spoiled, of course, because of that. So with Rossi as the manager, what do the Cubs need to do? Well, they don't have a lot of financial flexibility, and I think the Cubs should concentrate more on balance. You've got a lot of guys that can hit 30 home runs on your club, but not a lot of guys with really high on-base percentages. You've got Rizzo and Bryant with high on-base percentages, and the rest of the club is kind of mid to low in terms of on-base percentage. So they need to orchestrate some moves to bring in guys that get on base. Here would be something that I would do. I don't know. Financially, I think it's close. They might need to add a prospect or two in this deal, but I would look at getting rid of Jason Heyward's contract because while he had a really good speech during the rain delay, which we don't know exactly what that was because it wasn't recorded, but we heard about it, I would look to move Jason Heyward. And the only club that I could see that would bring back a return that I would like that's close to the financials or somewhat close would be bringing in Dee Gordon. Because the Cubs don't have a solid regular second baseman right now. They have a lot of guys that could play second baseman going into 2020, but they don't have a guy that's a lock for the position unless the Cubs acquire a shortstop and move Javi Baez back to second base. But, I mean, you've got Ian Happ, Addison Russell, Nico Horner, Tony Kemp, all guys that could play the position. Maybe they bring back Ben Zobrist, maybe they don't. But is there really a lock for that? So with that in mind, I would try to trade Jason Heyward to the Mariners for Dee Gordon. I mean, Dee Gordon's on-base percentage isn't usually high, but when he gets on base, he steals bases, and I think that's what the Cubs need because their balance last year, they had a lot of guys that hit 30 home runs or even over 10 home runs, but their stolen bases were next to none. They had one guy get over 10 stolen bases, and that was Javier Baez with 11. But other than that, you had a guy with 8, 5, 4. They barely had any stolen bases. In 2016, when they won it all, they had a lot of guys with like 8, 7, 6, and they had 3 guys over 10. Fowler, Fowler, I don't even remember who. I know Fowler was one of them. Of course, Dexter Fowler is no longer there, so I would try to get D. Gordon to kind of. I think his contract is like $19 million a year or $18 million a year. Hayward's going to be making close to that. I think he either goes up to 23 this year or it's next year. But I'm sure they can make the deal work. I'm sure the Mariners want to move on for D. Gordon because he hasn't really done that much there. He's 31. Hayward's, I don't remember how old Hayward is, but I think the Cubs could put Gordon at second base and he would be a better option than what they have. I'm not sure how good his defense is, but I like him as the leadoff hitter and a guy that when he gets on base, he steals bases. He only had 22 stolen bases last year, missed a lot of time due to injury. So if he can get healthy and steal some bases, I'm all for that. The Cubs have some free agents that I would like them to go after again. I know that Ben Zobrist is a free agent. He probably should retire, but I wouldn't mind if he came back on a one-year deal for a really low price. Cole Hamels is a free agent. He's been great as a Cub, but he really struggled in the second half, and he says that's due to injury. I would love for Cole Hamels to come back, but let's be realistic here. He can't come back for $20 million. I would sign him for a 2-year, $16 million. Yes, only $8 million per season because I think he needs to transition starter to reliever potentially, and that's where I'm thinking he might be at. Probably not, but I would only bring Cole Hamels back if it makes sense financially. Nick Castellanos is a free agent. Honestly, I'd love to have Nick Castellanos back. I don't know how much money he's going to ask for on the open market, but it's going to be at least a 4-year, $60 million deal. At least $15 million a season. He'll probably want closer to 18. So they have to concentrate on bringing Castellanos back. So let's look at a possibility to open up some financial flexibility because the Gordon for Hayward trade really doesn't open up a lot of financial flexibility. It's just swapping one bad contract for another. But I think Gordon's a free agent after the season where Hayward is signed through 2023, I believe. I would look to trade Kris Bryant. I love Kris Bryant. I think he's great. But doesn't sound like he's going to stay with the Cubs once he's available for free agency or once he's able to go on the free agent market. And he's, disputing, he should have one less year with the Cubs because of what they did in 2015 to keep him in the minors for 17 days and then bring him up. I would trade Kris Bryant to a team for 3 prospects, 2 of which have to be in the top 50. That way we replenish our farm system a little bit because it doesn't have a lot in there, especially with the Cubs just bringing up everybody with all the injuries they had in 2019. That's one of the reasons why the Cubs didn't win at all or didn't even make the playoffs because they had a lot of guys that got injured, especially down the stretch when you got, Hamels, Rizzo, Baez, all getting injured. So I would trade Kris Bryant to a team that needs a third baseman, maybe even an outfielder. I've seen some trades on Yahoo that really work out. They traded him to Toronto for 3 prospects. They traded him to San Diego, and they traded him to Atlanta. I like the deal with Atlanta because they got a young outfielder that looks really good, but I don't know if that's it. I don't know what the possibilities are for Bryant, but I know he can be an MVP type player, and I would jump on it. I like Kris Bryant. Like I said, he's definitely one of my favorite Cubs, top 3, if not the number 1. But it looks like he needs to be dealt just to open up a spot. And if you open up third base, you might be able to put Nick Castellanos at third base. As Bryant's going to demand raises in arbitration for the next couple of years, you might as well give that money to Castellanos because I think he's a better hitter overall than Kris Bryant. Just a thought. I like them both. But what Castellanos did last year in the second half with the Cubs, he's played third base before. I don't know what his better position is, if he's a better outfielder versus a better third baseman, but you've got to do that. Another guy the Cubs should look at moving is Wilson Contreras. And I say that because when he'll be a free agent, he'll be pretty old. And I thought he was one of the best catchers in baseball. He's great at throwing people out as far as base runners, but he's not really good at pitch framing. And he's kind of a hothead. I like Contreras, don't get me wrong. But Victor Caratini looked really good last year, doing a little bit of everything. And if the Cubs can get some good prospects for Contreras, maybe that would be a possibility for them to move to replenish that farm system, save some money in arbitration in the future. And, if Caratini can stay healthy and the Cubs can sign a really good backup, I wouldn't even be opposed for them to bring back Jonathan Lucroy as the backup catcher. I don't know how accurate that's going to be or how much of a possibility that is, but I wouldn't mind it. So that would be another guy I would potentially deal. Another guy you have to look at dealing, but I don't want them to deal him, is Kyle Schwarber. Because of how great Kyle Schwarber was in the second half last year, his value might be at its peak. You can get something back for him, although he's not paid that much right now, and I'm more about moving guys that have big raises coming, like Bryant, like Jason Hayward. But if you can get something big for Schwarber as well as Contreras, you might have to move them. Schwarber, I would keep, though. I wouldn't trade him unless you get a crazy offer or if they think he's going to be on the decline. As far as pitching goes, well, Jon Lester, if they could find a team that would take on his salary, which I don't think he's signed. Is he signed through 1 more year or 2 more years? I'm not sure. I don't remember what his deal was. But if they can find a team that would take Jon Lester and not give you major prospects back, you might have to look at that because he's going to be a free agent in a couple of years and he'll probably go back to Boston. Did he sign a 6-year deal? So that would be 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. He might be a free agent after next year, but I'm not sure on what the status of that contract is. Or he signed an 8-year deal with 2 opt-outs after the 7th and 8th year, or after the 6th, 7th. I don't remember what it was. But if you can find a suitor for Jon Lester, I would go for it because I think Lester is on the decline. He had moments last year where he was a really good pitcher, and then he had games where he just looked absolutely terrible. Hugh Darvish actually looked really good the second half of last year, which was surprising. But he pitched the whole season, and I wouldn't look at trading him because I think his potential is his ceiling is a lot higher actually. So he's good. Kyle Hendricks was pretty good last year. Don't want him to go, obviously. I would look at trying to trade Jose Quintana because you have to take on his. You have to agree to take on his. He has an option, a team option. Obviously, it's probably smart that they do take on his team option, but you could look at trading Jose Quintana as he started good last year, but in the second half, especially towards the end, he wasn't that great of a pitcher. So I would look at trading Quintana again to save money towards the cap so they can reshape the team in other areas, be more balanced, get better guys in there. Not to say that Quintana is a better, not as good as a guy, but these guys are very streaky. One good half, one terrible half. So the bullpen, the Cubs need to bring back David Phelps. I would say that. I do like Craig Kimbrel as the closer. I don't blame Craig Kimbrel for last year's failure. He didn't have spring training. He didn't really have a legitimate offseason, conditioning and whatnot. I think that kind of hurt him when he signed with the Cubs. He looked great in a lot of appearances, but then there was like 3 or 4 appearances where he just got absolutely hammered. But I like him in the bullpen. I think he's the second best option in the bullpen unless you get Aroldis Chapman back, who could opt out with the Yankees. If he does, I would consider going after him again. But if you're going to have to pay him, a 5-year, $90 million contract or something like that, I'll pass. You can keep Craig Kimbrel for about $13 million a season, and he'll do better than what Brandon Morrow did because Brandon Morrow barely played any games and he was a waste of money. So I definitely would bring him back. And yeah, that's true about that. Other than that, the bullpen's going to have a lot of young guys. A lot of older guys are free agents like Dunsey. I don't even think they have Dunsey anymore. Pedro Strop, I would try to retain him because they've had him for a while. But as far as money goes, it would be like a couple million a year because Strop struggled last year. So I would sign him to maybe a 2-year, $4 million contract. If Cole Hamels leaves and the Cubs trade Jose Quintana, or if just Cole Hamels leaves, which I think he will because I don't see them giving him $20 million a year or even $18 million a year. Like I said, I would sign him for maybe the most money I would give him. I said a 2-year, $16 million deal. I might give him a 1-year, $12 million deal. But do they really have that much space to give Clay Hamels, an old pitcher? I don't think so. But Tyler Chatwood could move back into the rotation. He actually wasn't bad out of the bullpen last year, surprisingly. He was good enough where the Cubs decided to part ways with Mike Montgomery to get they got Martin Maldonado for Mike Montgomery, and then they traded Martin Maldonado to the eventual American League champion Houston Astros for Tony Kemp. Tony Kemp is also a guy who potentially gets slotted into a leadoff position. He can steal bases, but he didn't do that with the Cubs last year. It would be nice if they can get him to that point, but as far as him being an everyday starter, I don't see it. So that's why I would go after Dee Gordon. So that's kind of my thoughts on the team. You can try to trade Jason Heyward. You can trade Chris Bryant, and I think Chris Bryant is very likely to be traded. You can think about trading guys like Wilson Contreras and Jose Quintana, and you can try to trade John Lester just due to how old he is and like what his contract is. And that's where I would look. But they definitely need more balance. They need guys with more stolen bases. You can trade Allison Russell. I don't know what his value is right now, but Russell should be gone just due to the fact that I don't see a spot for him. I'd rather see Nico Hoerner play than Addison Russell. I like Russell, but realistically, he's not really an option, in my opinion, in the 2020 season. Just my opinion. But yes, Bryant should be gone, and I really do hope they get rid of Heyward because I'm not really satisfied with Jason Heyward as a Cub. I was happy when they got him, but, I mean, do we really want to keep a guy because he's a potential Gold Glover every year? No. He's not worth the money that you're paying him. Move him. Get as much as you can for him. Get Dee Gordon somehow, some way. I think Dee Gordon would be a better fit for the Cubs than Jason Heyward. And I'm not trying to make Jason Heyward the scapegoat, but he just has not produced. He had a good speech. That's it. He had a nice a grand slam last year. He had some good home runs last year, but now that his value is a lot more, get something for him. Trade him to the Giants for Jeff Samardzija. Do something. It's just my opinion. Jason Heyward has got to go. And honestly, I think Chris Bryant has to go to get some prospects to replenish our farm system a little bit. So I'm glad that Rossi's back. I'm happy with Kimbrel. I'm happy for the most part with our starters. The bullpen needs some work with, especially a lot of guys are going to be a free agent. I'm not sure who they're going to bring into the bullpen aside from Kimbrel. But I think they should bring back David Phelps. Maybe use a lot of your minor leaguers that are, AAA guys that need to move up to the next level. Alec Mills should be good in the pen, I think. We shall see. So that's kind of my take on the Cubs, their season. I would love for the Cubs to lock up Rizzo and Baez at this point. I think they're the two guys that are the best on the team, and it took me a while to like Javi Baez, but he is amazing, especially his defense, like the plays that he makes. I liked him actually better at second base. I saw more of him, more flash at second base, but obviously he's a damn good shortstop too. But my moves are to trade Heyward for Dee Gordon. Obviously, they might have to include some prospects in that deal to get that done because he makes more money than Dee Gordon, I think. I think Dee Gordon's around 18, 19, something like that. I could be wrong. I didn't look at the salaries because I just thought that was too much work. And then you have to trade Bryant. You have to bring back Nick Castellanos. It just makes sense. Get some guys that get some stolen bases. Another guy to consider, and this has been rumored, Howie Kendrick would be a good clubhouse guy. You don't have to pay too much for him. He can play second base. Maybe he could be the backup second baseman or utility guy because he can play third. I think he can play first too. He can play the corner outfield positions, so he could be the new Ben Zobrist. Maybe play Ian Happ in center field. Schwarber and right, or Schwarber and left, I should say. Not sure who the right fielder was going to be, Castellanos or somebody else. They got to move on for Jason Heyward. They got to move on for Alberto Mora. He doesn't really do that much, and he's good defensively, but as far as his hitting, I'm not really confident that he can hit that great. So find a right fielder, maybe a guy that has a high on base percentage. Not sure who that'll be, but they got to get somebody. I would play Castellanos at third base if you get rid of Chris Bryant. That would be my preference. So if you guys are a Cubs fan, or if you have comments on the Cubs, please do so. Leave a comment, like the video, thumb it up, whether you are on Facebook or YouTube. Share it, favorite it. And of course, if you're new and you want to subscribe to this channel, I talk about The Walking Dead. I talk about Breaking Bad. I talk about random things, UFC events, and the Cubs. Make sure you do that. And of course, good old J-Dev will be back again soon with another. Have a good one. Peace.